Welcome to this flight tutorial for the Airbus A321LR for MSFS 2024. This tutorial is from a runway start with engines on. Before we begin, let's check out our flight plan in the world map. Although the Airbus doesn't support world map flight plans, I'm using the world map to identify my departure and arrival runways before I fly, as well as telling the sim I'm flying IFR. Setting my cruising altitude so the sim's ATC knows. Choosing a departure procedure and an approach procedure that I will enter into the FMC, and then sending that to the simulator's ATC. Okay, so starting on the flight deck, first of all we'll head down to the FMC and we're going to clear out all the messages that have loaded in when the airplane loaded in. We'll now head over to the FMC itself and head over to initialize after clearing out that GPS primary message. Okay, so top to bottom, cost index 100 for full power. Our cruising altitude today is going to be 26,000. And we're going to enter our departure and arrival airports in the from to section. So that's Stansted to Glasgow. On the flight plan page, click the soft key next to Stansted, click departure. I'm going to pick the runway I identified in the world map and the SID I identified in the world map and insert those. Going to repeat the process for Glasgow, going to pick arrivals, pick the ILS I identified in the world map, no star today, insert, and as we scroll down we see we've got a discontinuity, press the clear key, soft key next to the discontinuity to clear it, and we now have a complete flight plan from Stansted to Glasgow. We can now fill in our performance. We're flying flaps 1 today for takeoff, and for V-speeds we need to head over to the EFB. Finding V-speeds is super easy. Click the takeoff tab, synchronize the data, hit calculate, and your V-speeds will be displayed. All you have to then do is head down to the FMC and enter them. So V1 130, VR 144, and V2 146. All we have to do on the autopilot panel is dialing our cruising altitude. That's 26,000 feet today. We are ready to go, so parking brake off and throttles to full. We'll rotate at our rotate speed. Once we have positive rate, you can bring the landing gear up. As you reach about 400, activate the autopilot. Shortly after takeoff, you will see lever climb flashing on the PFD. At this point, you move the throttle to the climb detent as shown here. The airplane will now continue to accelerate. As your speed passes the orange flap markers on the PFD speed tape, you can retract the flaps. The airplane will now follow your lateral and vertical flight plans. At some points during the climb you may see altitude constraint displayed and the airplane will level off. This is normal. The airplane's just obeying a vertical constraint on the flight plan, and as soon as it passes that point it will automatically resume its climb. Just a quick note, although it says TCAS standby up here on the display, that's a bug. The TCAS is automatically set to TARA, as we can see here. When you see the barometric pressure indicator flashing, we need to set the barometric pressure to standard pressure, so you just pull out the dial right here. And that's it. All we have to do now is wait until we reach our top of climb. Top of climb is signified by a blue arrow on the navigation display. I'm just going to adjust the ND range so we can see a bit clearer. At top of climb you'll see altitude cruise displayed on the PFD and the airplane will level off. When we're at cruise we can take care of some preparation for descent, so auto brake we're going to set to medium and also dial in our bottom of descent altitude. As a rule that is 2,000 feet above the elevation of your destination airport. Don't press anything else for now, just dial in the altitude. While we're at cruise we can also fill in our approach ref, so we need some weather information from the EFB here. First of all QNH. So we're going to head to the dashboard, enter the airport code of our destination and hit search. So I'm mousing over the QNH here, so it's 998. We'll head over to the FMC, we'll enter 998. Next up is temperature. On the EFB it can be found here. That's 4 degrees. Which will enter into the FMC. Next up is wind. It's 260 degrees at 11 knots. Going to enter 260/11 into the FMC. And that's for weather data, going to enter some radio minimums of 150 feet above ground level. The airplane will now calculate our approach speed, so it's 121 knots. Next up, just going to quickly head over to the nav radio page. When you select a runway in your flight plan, the ILS should automatically be tuned. If it isn't, you can enter it on the keypad like this. For a guide on how to find ILS frequencies, check out the FAQ video on my channel homepage. With that done, we'll flick the FMC back to the approach ref page just for reference as we continue our flight. You can now relax until top of descent. Top of descent is signified by a white down arrow on the navigation display. When the airplane crosses this point, head up to the altitude dial and push it in to activate manage descent mode. You'll see descent on the PFD, the airplane will idle the throttle and pitch down. There isn't much to do during descent, just a couple of things which I'll point out now. Around 10,000 feet, at the solid pink dot on the navigation display, you can expect the airplane to briefly level off, decelerate to 250 knots and then resume its descent. When the barometric pressure symbol starts flashing during descent, you can now push in the barometric pressure dial, and you want to dial in the QNH at your destination, so that's 998. You'll also need to repeat this process on the pilot not flying side. Next up will be bottom of descent, so the airplane will automatically level off. You'll see a pink circle on the navigation display. This is the deceleration point. When the airplane passes this point, it will start to decelerate to its approach speed. As the speed passes the orange flap markers on the PFD speed tape, start to apply flaps. The airplane will get slower, and you'll apply flaps till you're at full flaps and the airplane is at approach speed. Drop the landing gear during this process, and at the end of this process you'll be configured for approach at landing speed with flaps fully extended. Now as the airplane makes its final turn towards your destination, activate LS, you can see the ILS information, and then hit approach. When the airplane intercepts the localizer, you'll see a localizer annunciator on the PFD. And as the airplane crosses the glide slope, you'll see a glide slope annunciator. At this point, if you want to auto land, you can activate Autopilot 2. That's it, you're now all set for final approach, and apologies about all this UI stuff, I have been switching it off, but the flight sim is still ignoring my settings. If you have both autopilots active at 400 feet, you'll see a land annunciator. If you want to land manually, you can just disable the autopilot now. For an auto land, as the airplane flares, idle the throttle. As you touch down, apply reversers. The airplane will take care of the rollout and the braking. You can return the throttle to idle at around 80 knots and disengage the autopilot to taxi off the runway. And that concludes our flight tutorial for the A321LR in MSFS 2024. Thank you for watching, I hope you found this useful. If you did, please drop a like, subscribe for regular sim content, take care, and I'll see you next time.